This episode of Fearless Rebel Radio is brought to you by You on Fire. You on Fire is the amazing 12-week online group coaching program that I run, where we build up your worth from the ground up so that it's no longer hinging on the way that you look. It's got personalized coaching from me and incredible community support, plus lifetime access. Get details on what's included in this program and sign up to be notified when doors open for the next cycle by going to summerinanen.com/you on fire. I would love to have you in that program and in that group. This is Fearless Rebel Radio, a podcast about body positivity, self-worth, anti-dieting, and feminism. I am your host, Summer Inanen, a professionally trained coach specializing in body image, self-worth, and confidence, and the best-selling author of Body Image Remix. If you're ready to break free of societal standards and stop living behind the number on your scale, then you have come to the right place. Welcome to the show. This is episode 156, and I am interviewing Steph Gaudreau, author of The Core 4, about how she transitioned her message away from paleo and into intuitive eating, and what she has noticed about how diet culture impacts wellness, and a little bit about how she experienced burnout as an entrepreneur and how she is working through that. You can find all the links and resources mentioned in this episode at summerinanen.com/156. First, I want to give a shout out to Falbalia. Thank you so much for leaving this 5-star review. Bravo for your exceptional podcast. I listen to every episode with great interest. Thank you. Thank you so much. I love loyal listeners. And you can leave a review by heading to iTunes and searching for rating and reviews, then click to leave a rating or a review. And I would be so grateful if you took 2 minutes to do that. It really helps others to find the show and the information that you're learning here. What also helps them to find the show is by you subscribing, which just takes 1 second to hit the subscribe button via your podcast app or YouTube or Spotify, however you choose to listen to the show. And don't forget, you can get the free 10-day body confidence makeover at summerinanen.com/freebies with 10 steps to take right now to feel better in your body. And you may hear me right now having a very nasally voice, and that is because I am 1 week into a terrible cold virus that I got from my son, which was inevitable because he was literally coughing into my mouth, which now I realize why parents always get sick when they have children. And so I'm kind of just hanging on by a thread, but because of deadlines, I needed to record this intro and outro. The interview itself, I was feeling better for, so I do not have this nasally voice during the interview, thankfully. So you can just enjoy it in the intro and outro of this podcast. Today's guest is Steph Gaudreau, and I have known Steph for many, many years. She was one of the first people that I connected with when I was into the whole paleo nutrition scene many, many years ago, like 8-10 years ago now. And it's been really interesting to watch the evolution of her business and her coaching as well. Similar to me, she saw what was problematic about what was happening in that space and wellness spaces, and started to really shift her messaging and become a certified intuitive eating counselor. And so this podcast, we're talking about that journey and just what she notices in those wellness spaces. And I think for so many of you, you're going to resonate with this. And she has some really good insights here, and also just talking about some burnout that she experienced as an entrepreneur. So today's guest is Steph Gaudreau, NTP. She is a nutritional therapy and strength training expert, helping women around the world find a more nourishing approach to food and fitness. In her best-selling book, The Core 4, she details a 4-pillar approach to building health, embracing your body, and owning your power. Steph is trained in biology and human physiology and is a nutritional therapy practitioner, certified intuitive eating counselor, and USA weightlifting sports performance coach. She's an international speaker that has been featured in Outside, Mind, Body, Green, Self, and ESPN Radio. I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. Check it out. Hey, Steph, welcome back to the show.
Oh, hey, how are you?
I'm good. It's been a while, as we have talked about already, because you just recorded me on your podcast, so we've been chit-chatting for like an hour and a bit
already, but I was trying to remember, like, you were on one of the first episodes of this podcast. So that would have been 5 years ago now.
Yes, a lot has changed.
Yeah, a lot has changed. And I'm so excited to talk to you about that change. So why don't you just, before we kind of get into that, just tell everyone a little bit about how you got into this work in the first place. And then, I want to talk to you about like how you kind of transitioned to where you are now. So you can either go into that right off the bat, or we can do that as sort of like a follow-up to you just telling everyone a little bit about how you got into this work.
Yeah. Oh gosh. I think like a lot of people, my entry into this work was the result of the things that I was seeking in my life. And as somebody who for many, many years, decades, dealt with poor body image, dieting, confusion around food, hating myself and what I looked like, and all of the exercising for punishment. I mean, you name it, that sort of sums up my story in a nutshell. And initially, I got interested in nutrition because I changed the way I was eating. I sort of left the world of what I would call dieting in the traditional sense anyway, the Weight Watchers world and stuff like that. I left that, and my transition into becoming more of an intuitive eater and the things that I'm doing now really started with eating paleo, believe it or not. And that was a stepping stone, I think, for me in the process, where I was able to get away from some of the rules and some of the world I had been in and slowly start on that journey, eating foods that I felt were more nourishing for my body, made me feel better in my body. And there was still a lot of interesting baggage that came along with all of that, but which we can maybe talk about later. But I changed the way I was moving my body and how I saw movement in my life, and slowly began to get a foothold in this stuff that I felt so powerless in my life with before. And that really, I wanted to share that with people because I could see so many people that I knew struggling with that as well. And I thought, well, if I can do it, they can do it as well. So that's really what initially got me into this world of nutrition and fitness. And the things that I'm doing now are related, similar in some ways, very different in other ways as well. So it's been a bit of a process. I mean, I started my first blog. I started blogging about a decade ago and started Stupid Easy Paleo in 2011. And then last year rebranded and formally began to move away from just talking about a paleo way of eating, although it had really started sometime before that. And so now, I mean, I do a little bit of everything. I'm a nutritional therapist. I talk about strength training and intentional movement. I also help people with intuitive eating. I'm a bit of a dabbler in lots and lots and lots of different things, but really just trying to help people come to a place where they can find a way to eat and move that's sustainable and enjoyable for them, helps them feel better in their body, but does not consume their life. And I think this is going to be work that's always going to be around for a lot of different reasons, but that's initially sort of is my story in a bit of a nutshell.
Yeah. And I'm super fascinated to like sort of talk to you about that, like how you discovered intuitive eating, or like, and like how you started to bring that into your work, because, similar to you, I was really entrenched in like the whole paleo thing for a while as well. And, like intuitive eating kind of like blew my mind. So I'm curious to know, like for you, like how did what was it like for you to discover that and make sense of it with like everything that you had sort of learned and done before?
Yeah, a process, I would say. And one that involved a lot of professional learning as well as personal reflection and contemplation. And, the sort of trajectory that for me professionally I followed has been really interesting because, again, I started in the paleo world, doing lots of stuff around nutrition and recipe development and helping people introduce this stuff into their lives. And yet I can also see when I first started, I treated paleo kind of like a diet where it was eat these foods, never eat those foods. There were lots of rules and guidelines. And there's a story I tell quite a bit, but it was that I signed up for a CSA box in my local community, went to get the CSA box from the gym, and got the box and there was a watermelon in there. And I just kept thinking, okay, I need to eat lower carb. And I was doing CrossFit at the time. So, I mean, I needed carbs.
Yeah, need to be eating carbs. Yeah.
Needed carbs. And I just got this watermelon in the box and was like, does anybody want this watermelon? Because I don't want to eat it. I want to give it away. And it wasn't, I love watermelon. It wasn't because it's not a food that I, don't enjoy. It was just, I thought this has too many carbs. I shouldn't eat this. And so, I didn't eat strict paleo for all that long in the grand scheme of things, but I got to see how even in myself, a way of eating that could potentially be really helpful for people and was helpful for me for a time was still very entrenched in dieting. And then, of course, the related things of the zone diet, right, which is essentially like counting macronutrients and the weight loss world and being an Olympic weightlifter and cutting weight for that. And, you get to see all of the different ways that diet culture and dieting touches this wellness space, even the paleo world. And then I started to also notice that when I began to do things like post about potatoes or I was eating this rice or whatever, people would lose their minds. Like, oh, you're paleo, or you have a paleo website. Is this paleo? And I just thought, I'm so tired of having this conversation. And for a very long time, it was, well, let's look at how it affects you and your body. And it just felt like I was continuing to fight and argue and justify myself all the time. And I thought, this is not working anymore. And not only that, but working with a lot of people in my community and seeing the questions that they were asking, the things they were continuing to struggle with. These were people who, and continue to be people who have done all of the, again, this is not typically people who are like, I've done Weight Watchers or I just came from Jenny Craig. This is people who have been doing popular programs that are elimination diets, or they've been doing popular things like paleo, primal, keto, fasting. Everybody has their own flavor of this stuff nowadays, and gluten-free, clean eating, all this, and became increasingly obvious to me that there was still a lot going on here. And in fact, in a lot of ways, people were more confused about food than ever.
Yeah. And don't you find like it kind of just kept getting more extreme? Like, yes. It was like, and I can't remember who said this expression first, but like you had to keep like paleoing harder. Like, like paleo wasn't enough. Now there's keto, and like now there's intermittent fasting, and it's like when are we just going to be told we have to just eat air? Like I've found just through observation, and I don't know if your observations are the same, but it's just, something is there, and then like it just becomes that much more extreme and dogmatic, and different variations of it come into existence that are like just more restrictive and like less healthy, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's, and we normal people, and I don't say that in a negative way, but normal people, of which I consider myself one, we are not biohackers, okay? And we are parading around like we are freaking biohackers and trying to optimize everything. And I had a conversation with somebody recently, and she's worried about optimizing this and optimizing that. And I just thought, you are not living your life. I mean, this is insane. And, so I began to feel more and more disenchanted with a lot of this, and just at the same time began to learn more about things like social justice, more about things like intuitive eating, more about the research and the rise in eating disorders and disordered eating, orthorexia, et cetera. And just thought, what are we doing here? And also, what role have I played in possibly perpetuating some of that with the things that I used to talk about, or how I used to talk about them? I used to have the word leaner in one of my programs, and it's sort of the subtitle of one of my programs. And I really went back and thought about what is the message I want to send here. And so intuitive eating in an informal way became more prevalent in my own life. And then earlier this year, 2019, when we're recording this, I decided to go back and become a certified intuitive eating counselor and really look at how I can formally start to, and even informally in conversation, help people start to unpack this for themselves. Because again, typically the people I come into contact with are not the, eating what we would call a standard American diet, or this and that. They're people who have been in and around these communities, these wellness communities for many years, and they still feel confused, conflicted. This new diet comes out, they feel like they're supposed to jump on it, or their husband did keto and he lost 40 pounds, and then they did keto and they lost 2 pounds. And I'm not exaggerating, those stories that I hear.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? This worked for him, it didn't work for me. And this constant detachment and an increasing detachment away from the body's feedback, what we're, when people say, oh, listen to your body, like it sounds really woo, but I'm talking about even things like, sensing your own hunger, your own fullness. And then we're also being reinforced and taught that we can't trust that because the world is full of hyper palatable evil foods that are out to get us. And yet when I look at who is struggling with this, again, it's not people that are eating hyper palatable foods 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. These are people who typically have access to more nutrient dense foods, right? I mean, there's a whole other discussion that we could go into about who has access to this stuff. What are the type of foods we're saying are have the halo around them? I mean, it just, for me, once I started to learn about that, I just thought I can't turn away from that. And I don't think that this hyper focus on finding the most optimal diet, finding the cleanest diet is helping anybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I noticed the same thing. And I see so many people that were where I was, when everything sort of came to a head with me, where, you're just fixated on like every micronutrient, and you're like, well, maybe if I add this, then this will happen. And it's all because they just want to like look differently for the most part, and I think a lot of times people will say it's about their health, but it's not. It's about like looking leaner, and I'm putting leaner in like quotation marks, like that, look better naked, like that kind of mentality.
For sure. Well, and we see a lot of I can't think of the word I'm looking for. We see a lot of sort of linking between, I gained 10 pounds, but I'm also feeling all these ways in my body. And I just, I'm even asking people, I mean, how do you know that that's because your body is bigger? If you're not feeling good in your body, that's one thing. It was like, I'm not sleeping, and in the gym, I'm not performing as well, or, my energy is crashing all the time. And so even for me to ask, like, can we separate those two things? I mean, we're making a cause, and we're making it causal, right? We're saying that the way I'm feeling is because my body weight went up 10 pounds. We don't know that that's the case, but yet we assume that that's the case in our culture, right? In our diet culture, is that if I reduce my weight, then all of these things will get better. And we know that there are so many other things that affect our health, right? Things like allostatic load, are the effect of stress, the effect of weight stigma, and how it affects stress in our bodies. I mean, so many things that intersect. But yet in our society, in our culture, the dominant paradigm is that it is the weight weight is causing these things. And 10 pounds, in my professional opinion, is not a significant amount of weight that's going to be causing all hell to break loose with your health. Yeah. And so, but yet it is the thing that we go back to over and over again. So typically when I'm working with people, they often they sort of lack that languaging, because it is the way we're socialized. It is the thing that we see since we're forever, it's been in our lives forever, is that weight, it is the weight, right? Weight is the thing I have to change. And I know you do a ton of work with things like self-worth and things like that. And that's a whole other story, but I'm always trying to get people to tune into how they want to feel. Mm-hmm. Can we separate that conversation? And sometimes folks lack the languaging because they just don't know that there's any other thing that they can want other than weight loss.
Yeah. Yes, totally. And it's about helping them sort of tease those things apart, which can be really hard when they're so entrenched in that frame of mind.
Yeah. And it's tough. It's not, some days I honestly wonder why I'm doing this to myself. It's like taking this road of, and because as a professional, it would be so much easier for me to sell weight loss, weight loss services, weight loss programs, whatever, right? It just would be so much easier. And yet I wouldn't be okay with that, deep down. And so sometimes I just think, gosh, this is so hard. And yet it is the thing that I think a lot of people are increasingly seeking, or at least seeking ways in which that they can exist in the world that are outside of diet culture, or sort of, in their building their own reality within diet culture, because we're to try to shift this entire paradigm and system is going to take a lot of work. But, how do we exist within it and yet choose whenever we can, or when we're conscious of it? Because I think there are so many ways that I've realized I've had things like fat phobia. I have seen, I've judged what's in people's carts. Even as a professional, even as a nutritionist, even with all of these designations that I have, being in a straight size body. I mean, wake up, Steph. Hello. Being in a straight size body, yet being so afraid to be bigger or not be as lean. I mean, where did that come from? How does that play out? And so, yeah, it is hard. It's really hard to be in that position when you're not willing to buy into that way of doing the work anymore. And yet I think people are increasingly craving it. They're looking for other ways to say, a perfect body is not the most important contribution I can make to this world.
Yes.
And how do I start existing more within that space?
Yeah. Well, I totally respect your integrity around it and making that change, because obviously you had a pretty big platform that was, when you were focused, when you were Stupid Easy Paleo, to make that change and change direction and kind of change your messaging a bit. Did you find that you lost a bunch of people? Did you gain a bunch of people? I'm curious to know what the fallout, or what the maybe not fallout is the right word, but what the impact was on the audience that you had built up.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I would say, I tried to involve people in the fact that it was coming for a long time.
Yes.
As soon as I made the decision, which it took 11 months to finally launch the website from the time I decided it was going to be a reality. And we didn't just make a new website, make a sister website and keep Stupid Easy Paleo going. Everything got redirected. It's gone. You can't even type in the old URL, it'll redirect, but you can't go to Stupid Easy Paleo anymore. And so I tried to involve people in the process from day one. Hey, this is coming. This is why it's happening. This is what it's going to look like. Hey, here's the peek at the new branding. Here's what it's going to be. And so really trying to bring people along for the ride. So I think that there wasn't the same kind of shock that there would have been if, November 8th, they woke up and it was Stupid Easy Paleo. And then the next day they were completely taken, by surprise and hey, we're changing the whole thing. So they knew it was a long, slow burn and build up. On the other hand, in advance of that, so about 6 months prior, I ended up changing my handle on Instagram from Stupid Easy Paleo to my name, and having a podcast since 2015. So for 3.5 years, I had a podcast and I do have a podcast where every week I say my name, who I am. I'm not Stupid Easy Paleo. I am Steph Gaudreau. Even if I do have a different brand name, I'm still Steph Gaudreau. But I would meet people in the store and they're so lovely. And we'd talk and they say, "Are you Stupid Easy Paleo?" And I'm like, "No, I'm Steph." I run this website called Stupid Easy Paleo. But anyway, when I changed my Instagram handle, it took probably 3 to 6 months, but I lost a quarter of my following.
Oh, wow.
We went through some significant changes just through the Google algorithm tweaks that happened prior to even rebranding, and lost a significant portion of organic traffic. Certain social platforms like Facebook, my Facebook page is hardly, and that's not because of a function of changing the name, but that's just, it's, less engagement and this and that. And it was hard for a lot of reasons. I felt like, and I get the rational part of my brain thinks, okay, well, the people who are really want to hear what I have to say and they're going to be here. And there were so many people who reached out to me and said, I first found you when you were doing Stupid Easy Paleo. And then I stopped doing paleo, but I stuck around because I really liked what you had to say about all the things that you talk about. So it was clear to me that the people who were, for the most part, staying around were the ones who really wanted to hear what I had to say, not specifically because I was doing paleo recipes, but when I when I look at what gets the most traffic on my website, it's paleo recipes. And, I'm slowly trying to change some of the wording, and now I'm not labeling things paleo anymore. And I'm making those changes over time, but it's been really weird to see that, the content, and I think this is just a function of blogging versus podcasting. Podcast has been really great and growing strong and amazing, and has, have those opportunities to sit down and talk about what's on my mind, have guests on like you, and enrich the conversation. And yet the blog, I feel like blogs are kind of dead right now, at least for me. So I'm like, okay, maybe this was fortunate. It happened at this time, but there's been a lot of ego wrangling for me and saying, I always bought into the idea that if I just stuck around and I worked really hard and I worked even harder and cultivated all this stuff, like it would just over time, eventually I'd arrive at this place of feeling more successful or growing a bigger audience, and what's the standard even, is it 1 million people on Instagram and then you feel successful? I don't know. I mean, so a lot of the ways I have been operating and a lot of the paradigms I've been in terms of what success means as a business person, as an online business person, have really been challenged. And I would say a lot of what I bought into before has kind of crumbled around me. And it's been interesting. I think, my community now is in for some of these other discussions and at least beginning to have these conversations around nuance and, the stuff that I'm doing now, but it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. And I feel some of that for sure. The entrepreneurial battle for sure. But I think what you did took so much courage to make that change and to do something that's more in alignment with you. So, and I mean, we could have a whole podcast on like what success even is and what that means. Cause I feel like, there's like just so much stuff around that. But I know like one thing I did kind of was curious to know if you would sort of touch on is like, cause you did mention burnout and on one of your recent podcasts and I'm curious to know like just what did you experience there and like what was the impact on you? And I think I know you mentioned that it's something that like entrepreneurs that we don't talk about that much because we kind of put up this facade that we have it all together. So like I've always just appreciated that you're one of the more honest people and like vulnerable people that talks about the real stuff.
Yeah. Can I swear on this podcast?
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously.
I definitely had a fuck it moment this fall when I sat back and I looked at, so I had a book that came out in July and that was a long lead up, 18 months in production, and the program that I based the book on has been out in the world for now 4.5 years. So, all this stuff is like a really long runway. But after, when I first knew I was going to have a book come out and a book contract, I basically decided to ramp everything up. And I've always had a high work capacity and with boundaries. I do not stay up until 1:00 in the morning working. I just don't. That's not me. 9:30 rolls around, I want to be in bed. So there's certain things, I try to get my movement in 5 times a week, so I'm doing some things on the baseline where I feel good. It makes me feel good in my body. I'm not working 18-hour days, pedal to the metal kind of person. At the same time, I have a really high work capacity. And my husband always calls me the workhorse. And it was sort of one of those things where I said, okay, well, this book's going to come out summer of 2019. Let's put the pedal to the metal and grow as much as we can, try to reach as many people as possible, because I really believe this book has the potential to help people. And I increased my podcasting. I doubled the podcast twice a week instead of once a week.
That's intense.
And I did that for 18 months, and I finally stepped away from that just about 2 weeks ago and went back to once a week. I was writing more long content on social, just, mini blog posts, basically, growing a big Facebook community and the energy that it takes to do that, and doing all the other things that I do as well. Right. And I stepped back and I thought, okay, well, surely if I'm doing all these things, I should seek growth in one of two places: financially or growing the community, right? More blog traffic, more social followers. And I looked at everything. And I literally sat down and finally looked at the numbers really hard. And I just said, well, neither of those things have happened. And you feel extremely crispy around the edges at this point. And for what? Have I bought into the hard work is going to bring me success, and hard work that brings me success is going to bring me that validation? And how much am I putting my own worth and value into this success, this amount that I'm growing, or whatever, like how much I can amass, like how productive I can be, how many things I can accomplish. And I've always been an achievement driven person. And I know part of that goes back to being a perfectionist, and is the way I protect myself against people, leaving me in my life. Goes back to when I was a kid. Like, I'm well aware of all of this stuff. Is, if I just produce a lot and I do really good at things, do a good job, then that makes people love me, and so on and so forth, right? Like, and so but it's a process of sort of stepping back and seeing all of that. So this fall, and I'm not normally a person who, I could tell something was off in me, because I've got good days and bad days, but my baseline is I'm like pretty even keeled nowadays and stuff like that. And I just was like crying every day, like in such a weird spot with emotions, and literally just not wanting to do anything, and just feeling like this is all pointless. And what am I doing this for? And it took me a while to come out of that, but I realized I had to take my foot off the gas and not necessarily step back, but slow down a little bit. And so I cut down the number of posts I was making on Instagram every week. I just, like I said, went down to one podcast a week and started doing things for fun and play. And I realized that, for me, food and like food photography, for example, used to be how I would feel really creative. I would love to get in there, and I still love photography so much, but I realized I wasn't doing anything just purely for fun or creativity or anything like that. And I just didn't have the energy for it. And that was another sign for me that I was going into that burnout sort of phase. And so, yeah, I just said, I'm not doing this, I'm stepping back and doing less, and whatever, we'll see what happens. But it's, when I started talking about it more, the number of other online entrepreneurs and people in that category that I know started pouring out of the woodwork and saying, oh my gosh, I feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
I just thought, why are we not talking about this?
I know. Well, because it's so vulnerable.
Yeah.
It's like, and you think that it's going to impact your business, I think, if you talk about it. I don't know. At least that's the story in my head. But I think the truth is that it just is the honest truth about what it's like to be an entrepreneur. It's like, and, like dealing with moments of disappointment or feeling like a failure, and, when your self-worth is intertwined with your success, I can relate to all of those things. And it's, I really appreciate, I think you made that post, like, obviously it was on like your personal Facebook, but I think you talked about, and then talked about it in your podcast, but I think you talked about it. It might've been like around the time my dad died. And that's why I didn't like comment or reach out, because I was just going through too many things that I was feeling fragile about. But I remember just being like, I really need to reach out to you about that. And then, just didn't. But I just really appreciate you talking about that and being so honest about it, because it's like, I think there's this facade that gets put up that, like, we all have it all together, and like we have this big team working for us, and you're making all this money. And that's not always the case. There's a lot of challenges behind it.
Well, and I think my friend Paul Jarvis talks a lot about this idea of purposely not scaling your business and being true to what you feel is right for your business. And it's so easy to get sucked into, because there are people out there, there are business people and entrepreneurs out there who love the idea of take this business, scale it as quickly as possible, sell it for, a profit, and do it again. And that's what they love about it. I am not one of those people. And that's okay. But it's not as common to hear those things, right? It's not as common to hear, hey, you know what, if you don't want to scale your business and you're comfortable with where you're at and that brings you joy and that fits into the lifestyle that you envision for yourself, great. You don't have to push this hard or push for this or, try to scale at an exponentially fast rate. And if it happened because you were doing the things that you love and brought you joy and fit into your lifestyle and whatever, great. But I think that there's still that perception that we all have to do business one way. And the online space is growing, is changing so freaking fast. I don't know how you keep up with all the trends and all the things and this and that. And then you have to decide, how much do I bend to accommodate? And one of my friends recently was like, and I love him, but he was like, are you on TikTok yet? You need to get on TikTok, get your account. And I was just like, fuck, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do it, and it was like, oh, I'm getting really great traction and it's getting lots of views. And I just thought, have we not seen the writing on the wall? It happened with Facebook. And then everybody's like, Instagram is the last holdout and the last bastion. And it was like, oh my God, it's happening to Instagram too, because Facebook bought Instagram. Or, YouTube changed its parameters and now they're not, they're changing the way they do ads and their revenue is changing. And I just kept thinking, have we not seen the fucking writing on the wall where and even with our own websites now, it used to be, hey, your website is your own. And I've said that, hey, that's your one place that nobody can fuck with your stuff. And that's true to a certain extent. But if the search engines are driving lots of organic traffic to you because of how their algorithms are determined and how they've rated your website, what are you going to do if that changes? And so I just feel like it's so tempting to buy it. Like, oh, this is like the next big platform. It's exploding. It's growing. There's no regulation, organic feed, all this stuff. And I just think maybe I'm just skeptical and I'm cynical. But at this point, I'm like, no, I'm not fucking doing it. Like, I'm not.
No, I'm with you.
I refuse. I did get my account and I think I posted one thing, but I was like, I literally will die if I do this. I just can't do this.
And I personally, I don't know about you, but I don't think any of my clients are on there. So I'm like, I think I'm okay.
No,
At least I hope. I don't know. I can't have one more thing either. I know my husband asked me about that. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that is. And I'm not doing it.
No, I refuse.
But I kind of was like that with Instagram. And then I was really late to the game. And I was like, oh, shit. So,
I don't care. I'm just not doing it.
I know. It is hard though. And it's like, it is scary with the internet. Cause it's like, if something were to go away, it can completely destroy your business. Like if for some reason Instagram went away, there's a lot of people whose livelihood would just be gone, Remember that day where Instagram was down for almost the whole day? Yes.
Earlier this year and people were freaking out the same thing. Yeah. They're like, what if it just went away? Okay, maybe I should diversify what I'm doing or have, a website, that sort of stuff. And yet I don't think we've learned. And so for me, I don't enjoy, and I've gotten really clear about this year. What do I enjoy and what do I not enjoy? I did this thing called StrengthsFinder with one of my coaches. It's called UMAP, and StrengthsFinder is one piece of that, but there's 4 pieces. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I looked at all the things that I really love doing. And I'm not doing the things that I love, and I'm doing all the things that lead me to burnout.
Yeah.
Oh, shocking. So I don't get off on crunching numbers and analytics and scaling. Like some people love that. They are the people that are just like, yes, 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 I would do this all day long. And I just hate it. I hate it. I would rather just be able to create and work with, help people facilitate whatever they're going to facilitate in their lives. Like, I think that's where my strengths are. And I think that's what I enjoy. And for a really long time, that balance has been very lopsided. Mm-hmm. Very, very lopsided.
So, what have you done to recharge yourself? Like, are you feeling like you're there, like you're back, you're recharged, or are you feeling like you're still kind of working through this phase?
I think I'm still working through it. I'm feeling better for sure. But, it was making some decisions like cutting the podcast back. And some people actually reached out to me and thanked me because they said, twice a week was like, I love your show, but I felt guilty if I'm, couldn't keep up with episodes. And I was like, no, I don't. Oh my gosh. So, cutting back on the show, making a concerted effort to do things that I enjoy, meditating for real. I previously, and I think, everybody has to find the meditation that works for them, but I was doing a lot of kind of moving meditation. And for me, that just allowed me to continue to be working and doing things, right? Even if it wasn't work, right? I'm just doing something while I'm kind of in this more contemplative, meditative mind space. So I started meditating, just sitting and doing that. And I think I'm still, I've kept that up, which has been really great, actually. I picked up knitting again. And
You're
the reason
good.
Thanks. The reason I did is to not be on my phone all the time, because I realized that for me, we'd be sitting there watching Netflix, or I'm, sitting there eating lunch or whatever. And I'm just like scrolling, and then the comparison kicks up, and I'm like, oh, look at how many people they have, and look how many likes they have, and how much engagement they have compared to what I have. And it's way healthier for me to be off my phone as much as possible.
Yeah.
So
I realized that my phone was like the voice of my inner critic. I remember I made that connection once in one of the sessions I had with my coach. I was like, okay, so every time I pick up my phone and kind of like scroll, I'm basically like bringing my inner critic to the table. Like it's like, hey, let's hang out.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. And I think like, some of these things that we're talking about are like obviously in the context of entrepreneurship, but it's so much bigger. I think anyone can relate to this. So whether it's like burnout in your life or with your dieting or whatever, or like that comparison on social media, like feeling kind of, like that world just doesn't serve you at all and drains you versus recharges you. Yeah, it's totally applicable.
Yeah. I also signed up for, for a while, I was doing some coaching for me personally. I was getting coached, and then I took some time away from it, and I went back to have a coach again, and really working with, working on that aspect of myself. And so, yeah, I feel like the fog is lifting a little bit for me, but I also feel extremely called to shift into a slightly different direction. And that is very exciting / like, what am I doing here? Am I going to do this again? Because I really believed, I expected, and we all know what happens when you have expectations. I expected that when I rebranded to my name last year, that this was like one and done for a while. It's going to be good. We just need to get there and get the website done and shift everything. And if anything, it's still been a period of uncertainty for me, and sort of, is this where I'm meant to be? Is this, the work that I'm meant to do, or that's really resonating with me right now? So I've got some stuff that I'm contemplating. And so I feel a little bit like I'm in this period of exploration and creativity again, which is really cool. But yet it feels a bit like limbo, because it feels a little bit unsettled. So I'm just really trying to surrender and let things be just as they are.
Yeah. Not easier said than done.
Yeah. And not slip back into work mode to cope with the uncertainty, because it would be easy for me to say, oh, well, I'm going to sit down and revamp this whole program, or do this whole thing and continue to tweak things and fiddle with them. And that's kind of what I'm good at, is just sitting down and powering through. I could say, all right, I'll just like visually rebrand this whole program this weekend or something. And I've just really been forcing myself to not do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so good. I don't know if that was like, I hope you're okay talking about all these things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I know I wanted to talk to you about all these other things, but it went in this direction.
Yeah.
But
no, it's all good.
And at the same time, I'm like, this is really good.
Yeah.
So, because we have to wrap things up here, but like, where can people find more of you? What do you want people to know about that you're up to?
Yeah, pretty much everything that I'm up to is on my website. So that's stephgaudreau.com. And that includes all of the, past episodes of Harder to Kill Radio. There are 260 something of them at this point. So there's fairly significant archive there you can dip into and follow along with that. And yeah, anything else I'm up to, programs, all the ones that are currently running and stuff like that are on the site. And then of course the book, The Core 4, Embrace Your Body, Own Your Power.
Yeah. And Brene Brown follows you. Let's just like highlight that for a second.
I think every time she likes my posts, people screenshot it and they're like, can you believe this? This is amazing. I think actually she first found me through recipes.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is cool. So,
well, maybe she's going to come along with the journey. I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so, because she's had some, like fatphobic stuff in her work, but she's obviously done so many amazing things. So hopefully she's coming along for the journey.
I think she is.
Bring her to the dark side.
I feel it.
Well, it's been such a pleasure having you here and talking to you about all this stuff. And like, I just always appreciate your honesty and you speaking from your heart and just no bullshit. So I really love that about you. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Likewise.
Rock on.
There's some really good quotes and insights coming out of that episode there. You can find all the links and resources mentioned at summerinnanen.com/156. I really enjoyed having that conversation. As you heard me tell stuff, I just really appreciate when people are so honest and open and vulnerable and really more loyal to their integrity than to monetary pursuits. I really respect individuals like that. And it was really cool of stuff to kind of share her story and everything that she's done to evolve over the years. So hopefully you enjoyed it too. And I will be back with you again in a couple of weeks, hopefully not sounding so nasally. Rock on. I'm Summer Innanen, and I want to thank you for listening today. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Summer Innanen. If you haven't yet, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this show. I would be so grateful. Until next time, rock on.